Hey folks, this is Riker, bringing you a Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls 2.1 Fire Wizard build. This is a build that works great at the entry level, but also has room to expand when you're able to acquire certain key pieces of gear. Just to show you how easy this build is, within less than a day of the release of the new season, I was already efficiently farming Torment 1. I was able to handle Torment 2, but less efficiently, and I was even able to get through Torment 3 without really dying much. This build revolves around three key factors: mirror image, control, and stacking fire damage. We'll start by going over the skills and then later talk about items. The first thing you'll notice about this build is that we are completely foregoing signature spells. The reason for this is that we don't want our mirror images casting signature spells. We want them only casting the powerful ones. So Energy Twister, Gale Force will be the fire damage twister that we're using, and the great thing about it is that enemies hit by the twister take 15% increased damage from fire for 4 seconds. All of our attacks will be fire attacks, and enemies will basically be always under this effect. Next comes the main damage dealer, Hydra, Mammoth, Hydra. You're going to be casting Hydra for every fight, dealing 400% weapon damage per second as fire, and then you're going to cast Energy Twister in order to effectively buff the Hydra. Next we have Black Hole Blazer. Black Hole is just all around a great control effect, and the fact that it's fire damage is just icing on the cake. Next we have Frost Nova Bone Chill. You actually have a few choices that you can go with here, and we'll get to those in a second. But what's great about Frost Nova Bone Chill is that enemies take 33% more damage while frozen or chilled. That effect lasts for 2 seconds. While that may not seem a lot, what you'll notice is that this build is great at dealing a ton of damage really quickly. It is amazing at melting champion and elite packs in seconds. Now we have mirror image duplicates, and this again is a key to the build. With mirror image duplicates, you're going to have 4 mirror images running around casting your spells. They only deal 10% damage, but we want them for those control effects. We want the energy twisters, we want the black holes, and we want the frost novas. All those things that are going to buff your Hydra damage. If you're alone, if you're by yourself, Black Hole has a cooldown, Frost Nova has a cooldown, Energy Twister costs arcane power, but if you have 4 people exactly like you all casting these simultaneously, this quickly adds up to complete domination. Lastly, we have Energy Armor, Prismatic Armor. This is straight survivability, nothing special. If you feel you're fine with survivability, then feel free to swap this out for anything else. Onto the passives, we have Illusionist. Very important. Anytime you take a lot of damage very quickly, your mirror image cooldown resets. In my experience, this means that in an elite fight, mirror image is refreshing every few seconds. Next we have Astral Presence. Because we have no signature spell, you're going to be very thirsty for arcane power, and this is going to help you spam Energy Twister a little more. Blur, purely defensive, and then Conflagration. Fire damage dealt to enemies applies a burning effect, increasing their chance to be critically hit by 6% for 3 seconds. Again, this is all about stacking the various bonuses that make our Fire Hydra damage ridiculous. Now, as an option, instead of Frost Nova, you can also go with Slow Time Point of No Return. This is more control than it is damage. It's going to stun enemies entering or exiting your slow time field, and since you're going to have 4 mirror images, you're going to have a whole lot of these slow time fields. Basically the entire screen will be stunned. Personally, I preferred Frost Nova. I found that the battles were ending a lot faster with Frost Nova as opposed to slow time, but I'm giving you the choice. Now onto items. Obviously any items that will give you plus fire damage are fantastic, especially those that can't normally roll plus fire damage. I got lucky enough to find a Cinder Coat, which is a tremendous boon for this build. Fire skills deal more damage, plus reduces the resource cost of fire skills. This is going to enable you to spam that energy twister that much more often. I also got lucky with the Stone of Jordan. It's only level 67, but it's still going to be better than any level 70 ring because 15% fire damage, plus that increased damage against elites really helps. Again, this build is great at melting elites, and the increased damage to elites is just ridiculous. For your other ring, you can go with a Ring of Royal Grandeur, which is basically a must for all builds. Or you can always also go for the double unity, one on yourself, one on your follower, with the invulnerability token on your follower. For gloves, I've gambled just about every single blood shard that I've gotten on gloves, and I still have not gotten a Tasker and Theo or a Mage Fist. I really like the Mage Fist, which adds elemental damage, fire damage specifically, but Tasker and Theo increases the damage of your pets. Either of these are good for this build. For your weapon, I've actually found it very difficult to switch to a one-hand and an offhand. The buff to two-hand weapon damage is crazy. Also, this build benefits from having a slower attack speed but making every shot count for more. Being able to attack faster isn't going to help you when you're running out of arcane power so quickly. That said, I'm holding on to a two-handed weapon only until I can replace it with something that either adds a lot of fire damage or allows me to have a second Hydra. And that item is called Serpent's Sparker. It's a one-handed wand. And that's what really will take this build to the next level. If you are going to go for a one-hander and an off-hander, then for your offhand you need to get Firebird's Eye. Why? Adds fire damage. For boots, there are no special boots to get for this build, so go with whatever you have. For pants, the hexing pants of Mr. Yan are actually phenomenal for this build, because while moving, your damage and resource generation is increased by 25%. All of your attack skills are skills that deal their damage once you finish attacking and can start running around. For belts, nothing special, witching hour is still the best, but one note, again, attack speed doesn't benefit you that much with this build. So something like a Vigilante belt, which gives cooldown reduction, may even be preferable. If you can spec for cooldown, then you're going to be casting Black Hole, Mirror Image, and Frost Nova more often. For bracers, the Strong Arm bracers are actually pretty solid because Black Hole's effect is considered a knockback, and with the Strong Arm bracers, enemies hit by knockback will be taking significantly more damage. And again, all of your mirror images are going to be casting Black Hole. For amulets, again, nothing special to this build. However, if you can get a Haunt of Vaxo, then instead of Frost Nova, you definitely have to go with the Time Stop. Haunt of Vaxo summons Shadow Clones whenever you stun an enemy. And these Shadow Clones do crazy damage. You're going to have mirror images and Shadow Clones all at once. For Helms, there's one that may be interesting, and that is the Archmage's Vikalike. Your mirror images have a chance to multiply when killed by enemies. Now that's definitely an interesting option. If I had a level 71, I would test it out. Unfortunately, I would lose too much DPS trying out this level 48 one. But if you do find one, try it out. The problem is that mirror images only last for 7 seconds, so that's not a long window of time for them to be killed. Still, you are using 4 of them, so the odds of one dying are greater, and if this could potentially lead to chains of mirror images just propagating, that would be amazing. Of course, for Helms, then there's also Andariel's Visage, which can give you that fire damage on a slot that doesn't normally give you fire damage. Now for shoulders, also nothing special to report, but at this point I should mention the Firebird set. The 6-piece set bonus, dealing fire damage causes the enemy to take the same amount of damage over 3 seconds, stacking up to 3000% weapon damage as fire per second. After reaching that 3000 benchmark, they burn until they die. With the Ring of Royal Grandeur, the 5 pieces you're likely going to want to get in order to complete this set are the shoulders, the offhand, the boots, and then we have to make a sacrifice somewhere, so pants and helm would have to be the slots we sacrifice. Of course, this will depend on what items you find. If you've happened to found the hexing pants, but you're like me and you haven't found either Tasker and Theo or Mage Fist, then go ahead and use Firebird's Talons. In fact, to that end, you can also go for Tal Rasha's in the Amulet and Belt slot in order to benefit from that increased 5% fire damage and the arcane power regeneration. I'll make one final note about the legendary gem you would want to use, and I think that the Bane of the Trapped is a great choice. Increased damage against enemies under the effects of control and pairing effects by 15%. Given the way this build works, that basically means 15% increased damage all the time, or at least when it matters. Again, this build is about melting those champion packs like cheese. That wraps up this guide. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment letting me know what items or skills you think could improve this build. And until next time, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.